Hey, welcome everyone. Live again for the Customer Success Show from another airport, except a different one this time. Washington, D.C. Ronald Reagan Airport. Just got finished up with Churn Zero's conference. It was a good time. And we're going to have another great panel today on change management. But first, give me some comments if you want to see. I'm going to add this cool video. Look at this. So so that was one fun video that we took. So I would recommend everyone coming out to Churn Zero's conference next year in Washington D.C. It's a lot of fun. So quick Success Panda housekeeping. Feel free everyone to sign up. We do have free memberships, and then come find your mentors, mentees, mock interviews, coaches, consultants, communities, events. You know all the things. So let's bring on our panel. So today we have Marta and Meredith joining us. Hello, ladies. How are you?
Fabulous.
Doing well, thank you.
Nice. So hold on. Mel said, "Hey everybody, that looks fun, Brad, and the Lime scooter." Okay, that was supposed to be the outro, Mel's, but I'll go ahead and play this one too. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
This was the outro. So Brittany Casey took this video for me. Luckily, see, watch this lady. She's like, "Oh, run, crazy person."
No, she was trying to
that
catch
one-handed.
that walk light.
I know. No, yeah. But it's like I'm glad she cut the video off right there because I like almost biffed it and fell over when I took my hand off. So it all worked out. Got that good vid. Awesome. Well, ladies, why don't we do some intros? If I sound quiet, it's because I'm at the airport and try not to shout. So, Meredith, why don't you go first? Give us a intro of you, and then
Sure.
Marta, if you want to go after.
Sounds good. So my name is Meredith Began. I say it rhymes with vegan, which I am not, but it is spelled like begin, which actually coincidentally aligns with my number one Clifton strength of activator, which basically means that I possess a unique ability to get people started, get them going, get them motivated, and keep the momentum going. As you can see, that is a good quality for change management. I live in Ferndale, Michigan, which is a suburb of Detroit, with my husband and our 2 cats. My hobbies are plentiful. I do leisurely activities such as jigsaw puzzling, knitting, a lot of reading, to more active things like gardening, and then even more active hiking, biking, backpacking, camping, and working out. In fact, I am a certified personal trainer and nutrition coach with a specialization in behavior change. So again, goes along with. I actually pursued those certifications after I became a customer success manager because partly because there weren't really great certification programs back when I started for customer success. And I wanted to sort of marry my passion for fitness and nutrition with the idea of client success and helping others achieve their goals. I am a passionate lifelong learner, so I love learning new things and providing resources and knowledge to everybody to help them succeed. I use my strengths, my influencing strengths, along with interpersonal and technical skills to make data-driven decisions, as well as remembering that humans are by nature emotional beings, and that's what separates us from the bots. So career-wise, after I was a bicycle messenger for a few years in Washington, D.C., I joined a nonprofit called Food and Water Watch. My last role at Food and Water Watch, I was in charge of email and mobile messaging campaigns to drive action and raise funds. The software that we use, Mobile Commons, for SMS and call actions, I loved it so much. I decided to become a customer success manager with them. After a promotion, because I was really into helping with processes and operations and running our team calls, I actually I was invited to join the chief customer officer, new position, as her customer success operations senior manager. So I basically wrote the playbook and enabled 125 CSMs and renewals managers on all new operations and processes. After that, and some organizational changes, I actually jumped at the opportunity to lead a team of CSMs, 8 globally dispersed CSMs. And my boss at that time, or at later time, said, wow, you're so great at seeing the big picture, at creating strategy, working cross-functionally to solve problems. And I was like, yeah, thank you. And then a few weeks later, I got laid off.
Okay.
So I am in the job market, but I guess I did explain some of my activities. But fun fact is I'm heading up north Michigan to go camping in the woods with one of my girlfriends this weekend. It'll be my first all girls camp trip, so I'm really excited.
Can I change that?
Have you seen the Jim Gaffigan bit about camping? Do you know who that is? He's a comedian. His name's Jim
One of the
Gaff.
guys on
Yeah.
my team would always send me clips.
Oh yeah, just watch it on YouTube. Jim
Okay.
Gaffigan camping. It's hilarious. Why do they call them happy campers? Those are all the people leaving the campsite. It's it's funny. There's so many good lines from that. So cool. Thanks, Meredith.
Yeah.
All right, Marta, give us the
Awesome.
download.
Hi, everyone. My name's Marta Montero. I am currently the global head of customer success at Gatekeeper. It's a contract and lifecycle management organization. I've been here for about 2 years. Prior to that, I was at a place called eCompliance, which then became Alchemist North America through an acquisition, which then became Eco Online through a divestiture. So lots of change going on there. I was there for about 4 years. I started off as their first senior CSM and then became the manager and then the director of customer success during COVID. So again, lots of change. And in that role was my first foray into change management because we worked in the health and safety space. And how do you get people on construction sites to do inspections? They do not want to. So that's where I really learned that software is completely useless if you don't also have a really strong change management program. And I started learning about change management theory, really aligned to the change curve. And I built the Kubler-Ross change curve. I built an entire post-implementation adoption journey based on the change curve and enabling our customers to do that. And then when I left eCompliance and I came to Gatekeeper, I saw pretty similar challenge as well. So I then improved on what I had previously built. In terms of personal fun facts about me, I am full of them. Firstly, I live in Toronto, Ontario. I've been here for about 20 years, but I was born in Spain. I lived there for 5 years. My whole family's Spanish. We did a 23andMe. My dad was expecting something really exciting. 98% Iberian. We're as boring Spanish as they come. But when I was 5, my dad, who was a civil engineer before he retired, he got a job in Hong Kong. So I lived there from when I was 5 until I was 12. And then after that is when we came here. So I've had a bit of a interesting childhood and life story, again, full of change. I really believe change is the only constant in life. Literally the only thing that I can agree on is change. As I said, I've lived here for most of my teenagehood and adult life. I live in Toronto with my husband and my rescue dog, Zelda. I'm a huge video game nerd. That's one of my hobbies. Zelda and Zoe, named after David Bowie's son. Zoe Bowie is what he called him. So I'm also a huge David Bowie fan. In terms of hobbies, I have ADHD, so I pick up a new hobby every 2 months and then I forget about it. The last one I picked up, Meredith, when you said knitting, I was like, oh, I used to knit. I knitted myself a sweater, or not a sweater. Sorry. No, not that good. Knitted myself a scarf. And I was like, great. And then I haven't knitted since in like 8 months. But the only constant hobby I have is I watch a lot of reality TV. And I think that is a hobby because we can talk about Real Housewives all day, any day.
Oh my goodness. ¿Dónde está la biblioteca? I mean,
Exactly.
first,
Where
I
is the
know
library?
where's the library? And it's so funny because when I was at the Churn Zero conference, I was with all these ladies and like we talked about the housewife stuff for like an hour. I'm sitting there because I don't watch any of that. They're like, we love watching trash. We love watching trash TV. It just turns our brain off. And I'm like, sweet.
Yep.
Yeah. Cool. Alrighty. So talking change management. So let's jump in to a first question. Both you ladies have some great experience and I can chime in too. So we'll do this. We'll put the question up and then we'll just go on my screen. I got Marta and then Meredith. So if Marta, if you want to give like a 1 or 2 minute answer, and then we'll go to Meredith, and then we can just have a back and forth, and we'll jump on to if there's anything to add, then we can. If not, we'll just move on to the next question. All right. So first question, how do you approach planning for change in a fast-paced SaaS environment? So if you've worked in any company, I worked in Series A companies, smaller startup companies, so change is constant and fast all the time. But how do we approach the planning when things seem like they're constantly changing? So, Marta, why don't you go first?
Sure. I think honestly, a lot of this has to do with my philosophy around change is the only constant. So if you accept that first, then what you need to do is constantly be planning for change, regardless of whether it's a fast environment or a slower environment. There is always going to be change. One of the other things that I think is really important from a leadership perspective is the way that change affects you is going to be very different to the way that change affects some of the individual contributors on your team. And then even within that, the way it affects every single person. I mentioned in my intro that when I was starting to learn about change management theories and practice, I really aligned to the Kubler-Ross change curve. It's adapted from, it has a interesting life story, but it's adapted from the death and grieving life cycle. And the reason why I really like it is because it's based on the emotional stages that people go through with change, whether it is something as serious as death and life, or it could be something such as we're just moving systems or CRMs or something different. Everyone's going to have a very emotional response to that. And I think you can do a whole bunch of things around preparing them for, the technical aspects of the change, like the training and getting them used to it. But if you work on addressing the emotional responses that people are going to have, the good responses and the negative responses, and you accept that people are going to have emotional responses, whether they show it or not, they're going to have it. And you set a program that allows people to share their voices, share their opinions, share their concerns, share where they're afraid. You go to them knowing or saying, hey, I know this could be a little bit scary. Here's what we're doing to address that, or I want to learn a little bit more. It's going to better prepare everyone as they go through that change.
I love that. That especially, the emotional part. That's like I keep saying it. That's what separates us from the machines, and something that always needs to be remembered. Change is constant, just like Marta said. In fact, that was the very first piece, if you will, that I wrote after I got laid off. I was looking back at my 9-year career at Upland Software and was trying to think of a way to sum it all up. And I realized that it was change, constant change. When Mobile Commons joined the company, we were like the 5th or 6th software. And I was the first or second person, like basically hired right after the acquisition. And now Upland has about 30 different pieces of software products like that were acquired in my time there. So to approach change in any company, especially a fast growing company, you have to first understand where things are. And so that's going to be digging into data, and data includes people and hearing from people, talking to people, find out from them what they think works well, what doesn't work well, what is it? Start, stop, keep doing. So learning from, like, understanding that as far as where we are, but then also from higher level where we want to be. The ultimate goal, the ultimate outcome, the very, very last thing, because if we're only thinking 1 step or 2 steps or 3 steps ahead, you're going to get a roadblock up there, and you're going to have to like figure out how to get your way around it. My husband and I do a lot of off-roading in our 4Runner, and that means like I am sitting there with a map, because sometimes we don't have a good connection to be on our fancy equipment, and so just knowing, okay, oh shoot, here's a roadblock. What do we do? Okay, we just go around it. Well, then that's going to bring up new situations, but then always focusing on what that destination is will get you back there. So no matter what happens, what change happens, you're still going to be pointed in the ultimate direction. So another big important thing with change for me is timeline. So like, what is my deadline? And so taking that ultimate destination and then breaking it down as many pieces as you can, knowing that things might have to shift around a little bit. So being flexible in that as well.
Nice. Marta, what's the Kubler-Ross change curve? What is that?
Yeah, so I suggest everyone Google it just so you can see the visualization, but it breaks down the psychological sort of stages that people go through when they are impacted by change, positive or negative. And so it's sort of broken down into 4 main phases. The first one is really just coming to grips with it happening. So some of the feelings that people are going to have are going to be fear and shock. When people hear that, they tend to be like, okay, someone's going to tell me we're moving to a new CRM, as an example. I'm not going to be like, what do you mean? But it's going to show up in smaller ways that you might not realize. It could just be a matter of, gee, I wonder what that means for all the work that we have to do, or all of our company data, like where's that going to go? How's that going to happen? That's an example of sort of fear that people have that they're going through. The next phase is around it's sort of deepening within that, but you start to sort of like question it. Do I really have to do this? How's this going to affect me? Why are we going? So these are the sort of negative emotions that people have initially. The third phase is when they now enter the like experimentation. So they might get exposed to it. They might have a clear idea of what is actually going to happen, and they're going to play around with it and be like, actually, you know what? I hated HubSpot. I'm excited to move to Salesforce, or vice versa. I hated that in HubSpot I couldn't do XYZ. I wonder if Salesforce can do it. That's an example of sort of experimenting and starting to think of what the new way is going to be. And that's where you're starting to turn. So when I say Google it, the visualization is really cool because it starts off kind of here and then it drops. Oh, my camera's off here. And then it drops and then it kind of goes up. So these are all the sort of negative emotions people feel initially. And then you get to that experimentation phase. And then they get to the final phase, which is integration. Like, okay, I get it. This is the new normal. This is the new system. This is the way that we're going to be. And a really good change management program helps. Everyone's always going to have a negative feeling initially. It helps limit the potential consequences of the negative and helps them get to the positive feelings sooner and faster. And the reason people tend to not get to that end stage is they get stuck somewhere in the first two, maybe even the third stage.
Yeah, I was gonna say, when does the Kugler-Ross curve end with me sitting in front of a TV trying new bowls of ice cream flavors? I mean, I was hoping you'd say that, but it didn't end that way.
I wish. That
know.
could be part of your fear process. I don't know, Brad. Like you're just like, I'm so scared of this. All I'm gonna do is eat ice cream.
No, it was funny because like I'm talking to these people at the conference, and sometimes when I walk by people, they're like, some of the comments that people think that I can't hear were just funny. Like, man, that guy is brave. You're wearing a panda head, around like on the street. I would never do that. And I'm like, to me, I just don't have. I think it's fun. But so like,
I have found that costumes like that can have the extra opportunity to bring out a whole different side of people because of the anonymity of it.
Anonymity.
Like some people that are real introverts, and when they put on a big mask where nobody can tell who they are, they all of a sudden like start being really engaging with people, and it's because they kind of mask their fears.
Cool. So one thing I want to hit on is we're talking about emotional responses, and maybe we can talk about, Meredith, if you want to start, just a follow-up question. How do we, like, if you're an average CSM and you have, you're doing a rip and replace and you're replacing someone else's software, we're using the HubSpot Salesforce example, shots fired. Love to help both those companies, but whether you're moving from one to the other, how do you overcome the fear of people? Because the base emotion of fear is super powerful. What are some tools that CSMs can do, like in an onboarding situation, to help overcome fear of change?
Yeah, well, to piggyback on the emotional side of it, I actually just want to do a shout out to somebody on my last team, Stephen Coles. He is a senior CSM, amazing. Like, no, he's just one of those people that you want them on your team. He did a survey, went very wide with it, non-industry specific, but it was all about like a technological implementation. And he was asking questions about how people think about going into a new technological implementation. Like, how does it like, and he had some, agree and disagree and multiple choice. And ultimately what he came up with was very much what the Kugler method or that you explained, Marta. Like, so I love that you explained that, because it does align with how people do, like from my experience with how people feel. So on your question, one of the key things that a CSM can do when they are implementing software their software into a customer is find the proponents of change. Because there are always going to be some people who are excited for something new. Those are often the people who, were the ones asking for it to begin with. And then there's going to be some opponents, but the majority of people are really going to be fence sitters, because they're kind of, they do go through those emotions, but then they are relatively open to change, but they're kind of a little bit afraid. So the real key is to find those proponents and have them influence the fence sitters. It's not necessarily time to go. Oh, go ahead.
So if I had to summarize what you just said right there, pull a Game of Thrones, find the supporters, and purge the enemies, right?
Exactly.
Okay, that's
particularly poison them, Brad.
Yes.
And just like in Game of Thrones, you do need to identify the proponents that are influencers, because not all proponents of it are going to necessarily be ones to help you create the change. If there happens to be a highly influential person on the opponent side, then you're going to have to figure out, that's when you do that. Or in a more diplomatic way, you figure out what their big issue is, dig into that challenge and figure out ways that you guys can negotiate a solution. At least so that they stop being naysayers. So then you can get the proponents more, give the proponents more voice.
I think your corporate jujitsu is very good, Meredith. Be scared to go up against you. There you go. What do you think, Marta?
Yeah, I completely agree with everything Meredith said. There's always going to be early adopters. There's always going to be laggards. There's always going to be detractors and promoters. And so the other thing too that typically happens is there typically are people who are those early adopters and innovators. Those are the ones that you kind of want to test the change out with first before you launch this with everyone else, because, and include some of those detractors as well, because it's going to give you an idea of what are the key messages that you need to be going to market with. And the market could actually be internally, or it can be with your own customers, and helping them with those end users. But yeah, what's resonating with people when we talk about why we're doing this, what's landing, what's not landing, and it allows you to sort of do a beta test of the change. And then what you also want to do is bring those people in to be part of building what you're shifting, because people are bought into change when they make it themselves, right? So you can get to 70% of the way there. Share it with those people who tend to be those innovators and early adopters, whether they are promoters or detractors, and then get them to say what they want to change and what they want to adjust, and start building that out and have them be part of the rollout of this change as well.
Especially when we do have more time for managing the change, which is not always the case, but if it is something where there's like a longer timeline and you do have time in there, I like to do visioning exercises with people, where you kind of think about what life could be like if you had something, to help you do your work. Like, what would that look like? Okay, what kinds of problems could that solve? If we were successful in bringing on a tool that helped us, what would your work look like a year from now, 2 years from now? That kind of a workshop.
Yeah, I like the question. Tell me what it would look like if, right? And you can do this in sales approaches, or in success conversations, but what it does is it allows them to project out into the future, right? What they think a potential future could be, right? So we were talking about this just the other day. We were talking about how to sell someone, like, it was the example was Churn Zero, because that was the conference we were at, right? But it's like, tell me about what would happen to you and your customers if you didn't actively manage them through a customer success platform. What would be the ramifications, right? So there's some pain there, right? That kind of will come up because their concerns will bubble to the top. So it's all good stuff. So let's transition for a second. We're gonna bring up this next question because I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this. So what are some common pitfalls when implementing change in a technology-driven organization? So I think that if everyone was batting 100% on change management, we'd have a lot more efficient and we'll say healthy organizations, but we don't. It turns out that life is full of humans who are imperfect and, like we were saying, that aren't automatons. So how do we do it? What are the pitfalls? What are stopping organizations from both your experiences? So we'll start with Marta.
I burst out laughing at this because if anyone from my team is watching this, they'll know that I say this all of the time. People tend to think that technology or software is a silver bullet. Oh, I'm having this problem. I'm just going to purchase this piece of software and everything's going to go away. I'll tell people to start using it and everything's going to go away. And then a year from now, they come back, they're like, actually, we're going to churn because no one used it, so it clearly didn't work. And then they go somewhere else and then the problem repeats and they never once wonder, am I the problem rather than the softwares? So this is why I burst out laughing immediately, because I find a lot of people think that you have an issue, you address it with technology, and that's it. I think of the spheres, 3 spheres: people, process, technology. And no, nothing is going to get solved if you're not managing the change in all of those spheres. When we think of a challenge, technology, software, it's going to address one part of it, but you also need to have process around that. That process needs to be built around people. And then it goes back to the whole psychological things that people are going to go through as they go through this and putting that together. So in terms of the pitfalls, the biggest one that I see is that people think, I'm just going to implement a software, tell people to use it, and that's good enough. And not that they're thinking about things in terms of what's the process that goes along this software that the software is actually going to support, and how do I get my people ready for this to embed both the process and the technology into their day-to-day lives. So it's thinking just around the technology sphere and not people, process, and technology.
I definitely agree with that, with forgetting about the people. One of the biggest ways that we can help people understand the need for change is the reason why. And that a lot of times is not communicated. Like, why did we get this software? And a lot of people's like, I've been in so many situations where it was purchased, and then you have the implementation team, and then the people that are going to use it, and they get in and they're like, and we ask them, so tell me, why did you purchase this software? And they all look at each other and they're like, I don't know, somebody else told us that that I have to start using it. So that is a huge pitfall. Another pitfall is, very similar to software is not going to be a panacea. It's not going to fix all your problems. The big one is data. Bad data is going to be bad processes, bad decision making, bad results. You're not going to be successful if what you put into the software is junk. The other thing is about considering the downstream consequences. With any change, there's an equal and opposite, change. Any action, an equal and opposite reaction. So there is going to be, no matter what that change is, there are going to be other downstream consequences of it. Could be good consequences, could be bad. So just understanding what those other impacts are, because I've been in situations where marketing team introduced this new way we're handling contacts. Well, if the customer success team has no idea that there's this new way of handling contacts and they're doing it the old way, all of a sudden, bad data, right? That was, all my points.
Yeah, no, I think I really like the point you made, Meredith, about, consequences. And I like to use the word trade-offs, when all of life is trade-offs. Same with making product choices. We have, most people, there's some billionaires that have endless amounts of money, but most organizations, most people have a finite amount of resources, whether it's in money or in time. And then how we choose to spend our money or time results in having a trade-off. And one of the things that has been, popular, I would say, for the past year, since we'll just say the SaaS bubble kind of popped from 2 years ago, when it was very, very frothy in SaaS and customer success. And then what's going on right now, where things are much more where we're talking about profitability and efficiency in organizations, right? And the job market's tougher because people just aren't hiring as much, right? And a lot of these CS teams are now reporting to CROs rather than CCOs, right? They're reporting to sales leaders. They're being put under sales teams. They're getting transitioned more into account management, which is purely the commercial motion. And I always think, like, okay, that's fine. If you want to make that decision, just come to understand that there's a trade-off. When I was at the conference at Churn Zero, there was I'm trying to remember which executive made this comment. I can't think of it right off the cuff, but she was a CCO, and she was on one of the main keynotes, and she was just saying that when her organization hired a CRO, all of their customers were like, oh, you hired a CRO? why would you do that? You trying to get all the money out of us? It was interesting. No one thought that by moving from the CCO, like a chief customer officer, to a CRO, that was sending a message that like, hey, we are moving off of, being helping with success and making sure that you have the business outcomes you want, to then how do we get the most money out of these people? And that was just from a hiring decision, which I thought was really interesting, because we see echoes of that throughout customers throughout the space who are saying, can I get on a Zoom call without having my CSM sell me something every time? Right. Well, yeah, 2 years ago, that was the reality. Right. But now a lot of positions like account management, and maybe CSMs, I spoke to several people where they merged those teams and they, downsized the headcount. So understanding the trade-offs, right, between when you're trying to make account management, and that's always, anytime in my experience when I was doing change management, is like, is someone going to be brave enough to actually articulate what the trade-offs are? Because there's a real temptation when you're trying to be the agent of change and present something that you don't want to articulate what the trade-offs are, right? Because you want everything positive for your case to be articulated. But I think that's important to know and at least understand, is that usually not every company has every function and feature. So if you're jumping from one platform to the next, everyone needs to know at least what the trade-off would be. So I don't know, any follow-up comments about that?
Oh, sorry, Meredith, go ahead.
No,
'Cause I was actually going to ask a question back. So go ahead, Meredith.
I was actually going to say that I actually call that the pendulum, the customer success pendulum, and that it often is one. It is a thing that changes as leadership changes. So a different leader coming into a company or organization might have the viewpoint of revenue. So then the pendulum swings towards focusing on renewals, getting our renewals and expansions. That's what, it's ARR, NRR. That's what we're focused on. That's that pendulum. And then you might get somebody else in who their view is no. That's the outcome. If my team achieves the objective of showing customers that they're achieving their objectives, they're getting the value out of the software. As long as my team achieves that objective, the outcomes are going to be renewal and growth. So that's where the pendulum swings back in the other direction. And so that's when I actually came on to, I started managing the customer success team of 8. That was, I was taking them through change. They switched from one business unit to the next. And at the leadership level, senior leadership level, they were changing. And so that was how I guided my team through that change, was by helping them understand where that person, where we are in the pendulum swing, what that leader actually considered is most valuable. The problem is that when that change comes about and the leader says this one thing over here, but then all the actions are the thing on the other side. So that's a more difficult way to manage change, I think, by not being open and honest and clear about things.
Shocking. Everyone is shocked. I know. Go ahead, Marta.
Well, actually, I'm glad you sort of introduced this idea of the pendulum, because I completely agree. So my question is actually even more relevant now, because as you are going through this pendulum change from one to the other, Brad, you talked about the trade-offs and how people are often hesitant to communicate those trade-offs clearly because you want to keep it positive and here's why we're doing this, it's so good. You're not going to necessarily talk about some of those consequences. So I'm curious to hear from both of you, when you are talking about the trade-offs of the pendulum switch from more revenue or more what I would call core CS focus, where revenue is an outcome of us doing things rather than the focus. Do you think it is in everyone's best interest to be very clear about the negative pitfalls or consequences of either one?
No. No, it's not in everyone's best interest. It's probably not even in your own good interest to articulate right what the trade-offs are. I mean, I can think of, especially early in my career, anybody who's trying to pitch some sort of change, they almost never have a slide that says negative effects of what I'm proposing.
Yeah.
You know, people try to omit that, even though pretty much there's trade-offs to every single decision, right? So we could sit here and work through mental exercises of all these different changes that go on within tech companies. Okay, you're moving to more of a sales-driven CS. Okay, you might start conditioning your customers to avoid you, because if you feel like if every time you're on the phone, you're trying to sell them something, right? Maybe they start avoiding you, and that's not helpful because you're also trying to help them be successful, right? And I think that's the strength of in the good times when people have the money in the budget to separate out the commercial and then the non-commercial, to keep us clean in the non-commercial, and to have the bad cops, those who want to take care of the commercial. It's good, the good cop, bad cop routine. But when times get tough, you got to merge those together. So.
Well, that's why I really loved having renewals managers. Not everybody at every product in my former company had renewals managers, but the ones that did it, I didn't see the actual numbers on everything on as far as who gets paid out for what and how the ultimate profit goes. But I do know it really helped for CSMs to have those renewals managers being the ones trying to negotiate and get more money out of you. And then the CSM didn't have to be that bad guy. The CSM kept helping them be successful. And I've been, I'm sure many people CSMs have had experience where they had a hard time gaining trust from a new customer, because that the customer thinks that the only reason you're trying to get in touch with them is to upsell them or to sell them on some services, when really you're like, no, I just want to make sure that you're being as efficient as you can be, or that you're getting the most value out of the software that you are. And so it's a little bit of a culture shock, I think, when a company or when somebody switches from one company to the other, or when that company, one company changes the way their culture as well, or what their focus is. So again, downstream consequences, that back to the beginning, is it does impact customers.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about, there are people that might be shouting into the show right now thinking, well, if you do CS right, then it's just a natural conversation. It's a natural unfolding of the process where you're making a renewal and not event. And yeah, at the best case scenario, that can be done. But there's also nuance in how you do certain things, how you're running your customer journey, how you have your CSMs handling the commercial. Because if you work at early stage startups, the CSM does the full stack. They do everything from helping out with sales, demos, to onboarding, implementation, adoption, expansion, renewal, advocacy. They're doing the whole shebang, right? And so as you go to bigger companies, they become more specialized. You get onboarding managers, you get renewal managers. And it's like, oh, this is so nice. We all kind of know exactly what we do. But yeah, I think it's just very challenging, because now as headcount's been cut and budgets have been cut, there's a lot more people who have been asked. And as one of my friends who's in CS, I won't say who he is, but he's like, Brad, I got transitioned now to do my renewals and the expansion. He's like, that's like a pure sales job right now. I've been transitioned out of success in activity, but stayed with my success title, but I'm doing sales work, and I got into this in order to not do sales, right?
Did that person have a change in leadership recently?
Yes. Yeah.
So
yeah, it's very interesting. So things are changing, as they say. Well, let's do one quick lightning round with one last question here, and then we'll wrap up. Let's see. What metrics do you prioritize to ensure that the change is delivering the desired outcome? What are some success metrics that show that we've successfully delivered on the change that we are proposing. Whoever wants to start.
Meredith, you go ahead. You had a very visceral response to that, so go ahead.
Well, it's funny because I actually recently wrote them down specifically and was just going to read what I wrote, but of course I don't remember where I wrote them. So we were talking about emotions. So I like a before screenshot and then a before measurement, and then checking measurements during different phases of change. From before you make you're planning the change, and then rolling out the change, and then ensuring sustainability of the change. Things I would, in addition to, task efficiency, one of the ones that I liked was on-time renewals, number of emails back and forth between orders team, or like the people creating the quotes, just quit. This is from my operational mind here. But definitely the emotion side of it. So doing a survey with agree, disagree, with multiple choice on emotions, or even open questions where people can jot down their comments, because then you can use an insights extractor to get people to really understand how people are feeling. Because I think that the way people feel, their emotional impact, resonance with the change is really a big indicator on the success of that change. And, then of course you can do things like knowledge checks. You could do like quizzes. Like I love popping up like my team meetings we call them garden party, because I thought I didn't want to just do a team meeting, and it was a weekly gathering where we grew in our, the focus was growing and learning and expanding our skills. Where was I going with that? Oh yeah, sometimes I'll throw up a pop quiz and say, I'll be like, how do we track our retention, or what is the field that you need to enter for forecasting? And just because it was a change that we maybe did a couple of months ago, but not everybody has grasped onto it. So I'll throw up that, and I'll anonymize all the answers just to show, hey, not everybody knew this. So let's make sure that we get back to some of those basics. Yeah, so I like surveys and quizzes.
Nice. What do you think, Marta?
Yeah, I don't have too much more to add to what Meredith said. I mean, my initial response was going to be a bit of a cop-out in the sense of, you can't say a single metric. You have to first map out what is the change trying to do, and then figure that out, and then have a before and after snapshot. But one of the things when I talked about building out an entire adoption journey that's anchored in change management, one of the things that we've built out is a framework that we use, that we enable our customers on, that I call COLTS, only because it was the only acronym I could come up with it. But the idea is you have to communicate, you then have to observe and listen, then you do the training, and then you share and celebrate. The celebrate part didn't fit in, so we just stuck with S for share and celebrate. But the observe and listen is one of the most important parts that I find people skip over. And one of the things that we've actually developed for our customers is we have a survey template that they can then use and share with them, that touches on a lot of what Meredith said. So if we work in procurement, so if some of the metrics that they want to change is length of time for a contract request form, it's great to see that it has objectively gone down. Before Gatekeeper, it was 7 days. After Gatekeeper, 3 days. That's great. You can say great success, amazing, fantastic. But if you're not also measuring the temperature of sentiment that people have, you could have had like a valuable metric improvement as part of the change of rolling out Gatekeeper. But the end users might still not like it. They might not feel that it has helped make their day better. They might just be getting stuck in creating the contract request form, and that's really annoying, and I hate it because there's this one question in there that I despise. So doing a survey to measure the actual sentiment of how people feel and not just relying on this metric went up or this metric went down is really, really key. So just wanted to shout you out, Meredith, for calling that out, because I think that's one of the most important elements that is often missed.
I did think of one more that was quality and quantity of questions. So in my operations role, that was one of the indicators I would use. I knew that after I delivered a training, if there weren't any questions, that was not a good sign. But then I also learned that sometimes if the question was really basic, then there's something that I didn't deliver appropriately or that they didn't quite understand. And then if the question started being a lot deeper and more sort of future forward thinking, then I knew that that the adoption of the existing change had taken pretty well, at least with those individuals.
Yeah, that's a great one. I think everyone really misjudges the value of qualitative information like that. Just because you don't get a hard number necessarily from it doesn't mean it's not valuable. It's extremely valuable. I love that. I'm going to steal that from you.
Okay.
Ladies, I think my like airport Wi-Fi like hit some time limit and it just dropped me. So
no worries.
Yeah.
We continued on.
You're back.
yeah, no, I was like, oh, I guess I should have calculated that in every time I come to the airport. No, I really like what you said. You know, I heard most of what you said, Marta, before, and I think too is I used to have a custom furniture business where like when you're implementing change in physical products, it's very tangible, right? It's you know, I'm going from having to do breadboards, you know, by hand to using, you know, this different type of carpentry skill, you know, for people that kind of know what that is. So, but like, it's very tangible. I think that can be hard sometimes with certain initiatives within tech, but I'm a big fan of like jobs theory. And so whatever the job is that you're trying to achieve, it's like the job wasn't being done before and now it is being done, right? So we weren't able to onboard users digitally, and now we can, right? Or that's the whole point of like being able to have change, or is just the certain jobs, right? That people are trying to get done in organizations is that job getting done more efficiently, or is it getting done at all, or is it improved, right? I think I like having a single metric that you can track to, because if you just orient around like what is the main job we're trying to get done, then that's the goal, right? And you can just measure it against that, as opposed to like trying to overcomplicate things and say, you know, like, oh, we have this and this chart, and this is like, it just is are we able to execute? When I was at the Churn Zero conference, I met someone and they were like, oh, you know, you're building Success Panda, congrats. And they're like, why'd you do? They're like, did you do all this? I was showing them a demo and I'm like, yeah. She's like, wow. She's like, you're someone who just executes. And I'm like, yeah. She's like, that's rare. And that's really, I think, the spirit of what we're trying to do in change management is, can you execute enough in order to make a meaningful change in whatever it is that you're trying to do, whether it's in your assets, your process, your policies, or people. So cool. Well, ladies, we're right at time. Let's do a little say our goodbyes here. It was great chatting. Where can people reach out and find out more about you, or anything you want to pitch?
LinkedIn. Find me on LinkedIn. I'm a very friendly, I accept almost all LinkedIn requests, unless I'm afraid I'm going to get pitch slapped, as they say.
Yeah.
But yeah, LinkedIn.
Nice. Don't pitch slap Martha. So,
Please don't.
yeah.
Same for me, LinkedIn. I am spending a lot more time on there these last few months and find the value really in connecting with people. I hate social media. I don't really do it, but LinkedIn, I do enjoy being on there and trying to connect. I'm also job hunting, so if anybody's got any opportunities, I'm particularly looking for director of customer success or customer success operations. But I might be settling for senior manager. I don't know. We'll see. If you have any opportunities, reach out. Thanks.
Oh man, spoken Meredith like a true newcomer to the job hunt. No, yeah, it's
First time since 2008 that I've applied for jobs, like
yeah.
not knowing people.
I think you'll find the landscape changed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So awesome. Well, ladies, you did a great job. It was a pleasure meeting you both. Thanks for coming on the Customer Success Show. And everyone have a great weekend. And we will see you guys next week on episode 9 about communication. Thanks, ladies. I'll talk to you later.
Thanks,
Thank
Marta.
you. Safe
Bye.
All
flight.
right. Bye, everyone.
Oh, my mouse is frozen.